For 2 long years, Lily didn't speak a single word. Not to me, not to anyone outside of her immediate routine. At first, everyone thought it was just shyness or selective mutism, something that would fade with therapy or coaxing. But I knew better. Lily's silence was different. It was deliberate, watchful, intelligent. Her eyes never wandered. They observed everything, storing each detail in a way that no adult could truly comprehend. Even though she never uttered a word, I could feel her presence behind every glance, every tiny gesture. She was silently cataloging the world, and more importantly, she was silently protecting herself, and perhaps even me. It started subtly. I began noticing headaches that came out of nowhere, moments of nausea that hit me without warning, and dizziness that made standing unbearable. The doctors offered no clear explanation. Stress, one said. You're getting older. Your body is just reacting. But the truth gnawed at me from the inside. I didn't feel like it was normal. Something in my home had shifted, and I couldn't pinpoint it. Yet each time I felt unwell, I noticed Lily watching me. She would clutch the edge of the sofa, her wide eyes locked on mine, almost pleading. Something in her gaze told me she knew exactly why I was suffering. The first time Lily spoke after 2 silent years was unlike anything I could have imagined. It wasn't casual words or a hesitant sentence. It was a warning. She climbed onto my lap quietly, her small hands gripping my shirt like a lifeline. Leaning close, she whispered words that made the blood freeze in my veins. Don't eat Mummy's food. My mind reeled. I barely knew how to respond. Staring at her in shock, the words were precise, urgent, and terrifyingly mature for a child of her age. I tried to ask her what she meant, but the words tumbled out again, each one weighted with fear and truth. She puts bad stuff in your drink, in your soup. She says you're in the way. In that moment, I realized the significance of trust in a child's instincts when adults cannot see the danger around them. Lily. Silence hadn't been weakness, it had been careful observation. Her words were a lifeline, a bridge between what she had been silently witnessing and the peril that I had been blind to. The danger had been subtle, masked behind everyday smiles and ordinary meals. But Lily's warning made the invisible visible. And yet, even after she spoke, her silence returned. She would nod, fidget, or watch with those penetrating eyes, but the words stopped. It was as if she had fulfilled her duty for the moment, letting me know in her own way that I must act. I had seen firsthand that silence does to equal ignorance. Children can perceive far more than adults give them credit for, and sometimes they speak only when it is absolutely necessary. When words are the only way to protect the people they loved. After that day, nothing was the same in my house. I started noticing small, subtle details that I had once brushed off. Cups left too close to the edge of the table. Spoons that seemed to have traces of residue that did belong. Even the faint, metallic taste that lingered in some of the soups Claire prepared. I felt watched, not by Lily, but by the shadows that seemed to follow me whenever she was around. Yet Lily's eyes remained the same, wide, alert, unblinking. She did say another word, but I felt her silently guiding me, urging me to pay attention. I began documenting everything, every meal, every sip, every sudden wave of dizziness. I even started taking photos of my plates and cups before eating, comparing them for the slightest change. And all the while, Lily would sit nearby, sometimes brushing her finger against my hand in a gesture I had come to interpret as reassurance. It was as if she was silently saying, "I told you, now you see it too." Then there were moments that chilled me to the bone. One morning, I reached for a glass of juice on the counter. Before it even touched my lips, Lily darted forward, placing both tiny hands on mine. Her expression was fierce, her brows furrowed. She mouthed words I could not hear but somehow understood. She shook her head violently, her little body trembling. My hand froze, the glass still hovering. She let out a soft, almost inaudible whimper. the kind that tore at the heart and backed away. That single gesture told me more than words ever could. Danger was real, immediate, and closer than I had thought. I began to notice other patterns, too. Claire's visits were always perfectly timed, always accompanied by carefully prepared meals. Her cheerfulness felt rehearsed, mechanical. I started asking subtle questions about the ingredients, about recipes, and I noticed the brief flicker of annoyance in her eyes whenever I probed. It was nothing I could prove, but Lily seemed to sense it immediately. She would sit closer to me after those exchanges, clutching my arm, her eyes darting toward Claire as if silently warning, she is watching. She knows we know. The more I observed, the more I realized how perceptive Lily truly was. Her silence was just a choice. It was a shield, a way to absorb, analyze, and protect. She had been warning me in ways that adults could not always recognize. Every glance, every subtle movement, every careful positioning of her small body had been a coded message I was only beginning to decode. I became hyper-aware, cautious in ways I never thought I would have to be. I started preparing my own meals, keeping a careful eye on every ingredient, every utensil. And though Lily never spoke another word, her presence felt louder than ever. She was a sentinel, a silent guardian who had chosen the perfect moment to break her silence and save me. Yet the tension in the house grew with each passing day. Every dinner, every shared moment, became a test of vigilance. I could feel the danger lingering in the corners, waiting for any lapse in attention. And through it all, Lily remained at my side, watching, waiting. Her silence both a comfort and a warning. Days turned into weeks, and the unease in my home grew heavier. Every creak of the floorboards, every clink of dishes set my nerves on edge. I knew I had to be careful. But living in my own house now felt like walking through a maze of hidden traps. And through it all, Lily remained my constant guide. Silent, but unyielding. Her eyes always on me, always alert. It started with the small interventions that only a child could get away with unnoticed. One morning, I poured myself a cup of tea. Before I could add sugar, Lily grabbed my hand and shook her head so quickly it startled me. I froze and looked at the cup. The faint smell of something bitter made my stomach turn. I immediately set the cup aside and cleaned it thoroughly, realizing Lily had saved me once again. Her methods were subtle but unmistakable. When I sat down to eat, she would rearrange the silverware or nudge a plate slightly to the side. At first, I thought it was coincidence or a child fidgeting, but I began paying attention. Time and again, the meals she corrected were the same ones that left me uneasy, meals prepared by Claire. Lily wasn't just watching, she was guiding me away from harm, using the skills she had honed in her long silence. I also started noticing patterns in Claire's behavior. She always lingered when I cooked for myself, watching too closely, insisting on small, unnecessary adjustments. The smile never reached her eyes, and every time I caught her staring, Lily would stiffen, her small body alert, almost like a soldier ready to protect. One afternoon, Claire suggested adding extra seasoning to a dish I had prepared. I shook my head politely, but Lily, sitting quietly nearby, grabbed my arm and shook it. Her gaze locked onto mine, urgent and fearful. Don't trust her. Not this time. That night, I slept lightly, my ears attuned to the softest sounds. I noticed Claire moving about the kitchen, preparing something for the next day. My stomach tightened. Lily curled up beside me on the couch, her small hand resting on my chest, the weight of her silent warning almost tangible. I whispered to her, asking if she knew what Claire was planning. She just pressed her lips together and shook her head slowly, but the message was clear. She had seen enough to know danger was imminent. I began to take notes, documenting every suspicious act, every small intervention by Lily, every detail that could later prove useful. I became meticulous, almost obsessive, measuring cups, checking ingredients, and keeping a record of every meal. And yet, through all this, I couldn't help but marvel at Lily. Her intelligence, her perception, and her bravery were astonishing. She had lived in silence for 2 years, observing a world that could have been dangerous, and she had chosen exactly the right moment to speak. The tension in the house reached a boiling point. Each day was a delicate dance of vigilance, intuition, and trust in a child whose voice had once been absent, but whose eyes spoke volumes. I was learning to see through her perspective, to anticipate threats, and to navigate the hidden dangers that seemed to lurk around every corner. And all the while, Lily remained my silent guardian, her presence a constant reminder that sometimes the smallest voices can hold the greatest power. The days grew longer, but the weight in the house grew heavier. Every sound made me jump. Every movement caught my eye. I no longer trusted the routines I had once taken for granted. The kitchen, once a place of warmth and comfort, had become a battlefield of subtle threats. And through it all, Lily remained vigilant, her presence a constant shield, silent yet commanding. It began to escalate in small, almost imperceptible ways. One evening, I noticed a faint powdery residue near the sugar bowl. I froze, my heart pounding. Before I could investigate further, Lily tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with urgency. She pointed to the bowl, then to me, then back at the kitchen door. The message was clear: something had been added to my food. My stomach churned, and for the first time, fear gripped me fully. I had no doubt Claire's intentions were dangerous. From that moment on, Lily became more active in protecting me. She would intercept food before I could taste it, rearrange dishes on the table, or stand guard by the kitchen whenever Claire was near. I realized that every move she made, every small gesture, was part of a pattern I had barely begun to understand. It was almost like she had been rehearsing for this moment, her entire life silent, observing, and then decisive. Claire, on the other hand, seemed oblivious, or maybe she was just overconfident. Her smiles were sharper now, less genuine, her tone clipped when she spoke to me. She lingered in the kitchen, watching me cook, insisting I try her recipes. But Lily's presence had grown into a subtle blockade. The child's eyes followed her every move, her body rigid with tension, her small hands occasionally knocking objects or shifting utensils, just enough to throw Claire off without her noticing. I began taking precautions of my own. I stopped eating anything prepared by Claire. I washed every plate and utensil meticulously, and I kept a small notebook of every suspicious act. But more than anything, I started to rely on Lily's instincts. It became clear that her silence had been her way of processing danger. Now her every movement, her every glance, spoke volumes. I trusted her in ways I had never trusted any adult before. The tension reached its peak one afternoon. I was preparing a light snack when I noticed Claire moving behind me, a tray in her hands. Before she could offer it, Lily jumped onto the counter, her small hands stopping me from taking the plate. Her eyes met mine, wide and urgent, her lips forming the words I could barely hear. No. Danger. I hesitated, my mind racing. The tray clattered to the counter, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. That night, I sat with Lily on the couch, reviewing the events of the day in my mind. She curled up beside me, resting her head on my shoulder, and for a moment she allowed herself to be a child again, silent, but present. I whispered my gratitude, though she didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her actions had already spoken, louder than any words could, and yet the sense of danger remained, a shadow over every meal, every movement, every glance. The house, once familiar and comforting, had become a labyrinth of suspicion and subtle threats. I knew I had to remain vigilant, to follow Lily's instincts, and to anticipate the next move. The tension was far from over. By now, I had learned to read Lily like a book. Every twitch of her fingers, every shift of her gaze, every small movement carried a meaning I had once overlooked. It was as if she had developed an entire language in her silence, one that only I could understand. And now, more than ever, I needed to pay attention. The sense of danger escalated. Claire's visits became longer, more intrusive, her cheerful facade cracking at odd moments. I could feel her tension, her impatience, when I questioned a recipe or refused her food. It was subtle, but I had learned to notice. And Lily noticed too. The small, protective gestures she made were almost instinctual. A hand on my arm, a nudge away from a cup, a subtle shift in the position of a plate. Each act was calculated, precise, and life-saving. One afternoon, I caught Claire glancing at the spice rack as I stirred a pot. There was a flicker in her eyes, a brief hesitation that made my stomach twist. Lily, perched on the counter, froze as well, her gaze locked onto mine, warning me. I paused mid-stir, holding the wooden spoon in my hand, and felt the weight of her silent caution. It was no longer a gentle warning, it was urgent, almost desperate. I began documenting more rigorously. Every suspicious movement, every odd glance, every subtle attempt to influence what I ate. And Lily's actions became bolder. She would intercept ingredients before I could touch them, pull objects from my hands, or even stand between me and Claire whenever she sensed danger. Each time, I realized more clearly just how much this child had endured and how fiercely she wanted to protect me. The house seemed to shrink under the pressure. Rooms I had once found comforting now felt tense, charged with an invisible threat. I became hyper-vigilant, analyzing every detail, the placement of the silverware, the smell of the food, the way Claire moved through the kitchen. And always Lily was there, my silent sentinel. I knew that without her, I would be walking blindly into danger. One night, the tension reached a new level. I noticed Claire lingering near the pantry, her movements calculated, her attention focused on the items I had set aside. Lily, sitting on the counter, stiffened instantly. Her tiny hands moved in a way that suggested warning, cautioning me without a sound. I froze, listening, watching, heart pounding. The unspoken message was clear. Something was about to happen, and I had to act carefully. Even in sleep, I could shake the awareness. Lily curled beside me on the couch, her body tense, even in rest. It was as if she were ready to spring into action at any second, protecting me in ways I could not yet anticipate. Her eyes, though heavy with fatigue, still held the same vigilance, the same silent determination. And so life continued in a fragile balance. Each day a careful dance of caution and observation, each moment a test of trust, instinct, and vigilance. I had learned to depend entirely on Lily, to see the world through her silent, watchful eyes. Every gesture, every warning, every instinctive act she made became crucial, guiding me through the hidden dangers that seemed to lurk in the most ordinary places.